Hello there. All right, I want to share a little bit from this book titled Windows into the Soul by Michael Sullivan on the value of prayer in a spiritual practice. He says art allows the process of allowing God to cast light into our dark spaces and to take the art takes on a physical form that is often missing from a typical prayer life. We will find ways to express thoughts and feelings through this thing we call art. Art encourages your soul to take flight among the things that might be enslaving you. And he says we form what we call windows to the soul, places where, despite the dark pains of life, God invites you to see through a glass more clearly. The art allows you to yell, scream, poke, prod at the God you call Christ, so that God's life might be yours as you pray. But it also asks you to laugh, joke, celebrate the Jesus who also loves you and this world by inviting you to all of yourself and all of the ups and downs of life, right? So I want to talk about three things as we go into this process of creating art, okay? So what we're doing is we're not creating beautiful pieces of art. Okay, I'm going to say that up front because some of my classes we do end up making some really beautiful things. And I have said in those other classes, I love being able to look at something on the wall, it's infused with this conversation I've had. But I do also like it being beautiful, right? In these particular exercises, we may not necessarily come out on the other side with something that's quote beautiful or wall worthy, if you understand what I mean by that. But what I hope to do is I hope to be equipping you with three ways you can go at praying on paper as opposed to necessarily just praying with words out loud. Okay. So this leads to the second thing. We're not creating beautiful pieces of art. We're striving for honesty. Number two, we are putting away any sort of criticism. So if you've ever been in an artistic situation, especially when you're side by side with someone who has a brilliant way about them and they just can create beautiful things quite quickly, and this is not what we're going for. And so if you start to feel that criticism coming in, I would just invite you to try to notice it without embracing it, if you know what I mean. So if you've ever been in a place, public speaking, or it's your turn to speak up about something, or any of those times where it starts to fill you with anxiety, find a way to make peace with that, either by just letting the words be what they are and continue on in your process, kind of setting it aside. There is a book called Big Magic by, I think her name is Elizabeth McGovern. I'll put that in the resources. And she talks about how any creative process has this inner critic, or it can. And how she's learned to manage it is almost having a conversation with, well, you can be here, but I'm the one that's actually driving the car. So you can be in the passenger seat, you can be in the back seat, but you're not going to stop me from this creative process. So if that visual, Elizabeth Gilbert, if that visual helps you, use that visual as you go through your process, okay? The last thing I want to talk about is the distractions, right? So I know for me, I have an art area, for lack of a better way to do it. I'm very fortunate to have that. It's kind of been this thing that I've had for the last 10 years, where no matter where we are, because some of you may know I'm a military wife, so I've done a lot of moving around and putting things in storage and all that kind of stuff. But there's always been a table of some sort with a box nearby with my art supplies so that I can always get to it if I need to get to it. And I really have made a practice of creating in some sort of fashion, whether it be just painting, a few strokes of paint on a piece of paper, to writing in my journal. I've always made that a commitment in my life. And so to get rid of any distractions, which means either putting it on your calendar that this is the time that you're doing this, or going to a coffee shop, downloading the app on your phone, putting in some headphones, and just having things spread out in front of you, taking it to a library. So you really just have to commit to yourself that this is something that you need for your soul. And I'm interested in when you pick something and it is, your decision to pick it, it also is an invitation for you to acknowledge that it's time for you to move in this direction. So I always say, I honor that you've said that this is what you want to do, but to make it a reality, it really does need to be on your calendar, right? That it is a non-negotiable. So however you can navigate that, I encourage you to do that. All right, I'll see you back here in a moment.
All right, you guys, I wanted to take a moment to talk, well, more than a moment, a few moments, to talk about what our intention is behind this practice of unlearning prayer and the activity that you're going to be working on. So I find that the easiest way for me to do this is I'm going to explain to you what we're doing, and then I'm going to take a series of pictures to show you what mine is in process. Because it is one of those things where it's going to take, I would say, probably a good 20 to 30 minutes, possibly even longer, that you'll need to set aside and really allow this to be a prayerful experience, ironically, as we're unlearning prayer. And here's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be having this in the resources, which will be segments of passages from the Bible, segments of different types of prayers from different types of religions as well as denominations. I'm going to add some real life pictures, copies of pictures from nature. I want you to feel free, if you have magazines, to bring them in and allow it to be a part of the process. And what you're going to do specifically is you're going to read through the prayers, the passages, look at the pictures, look at the magazines if you have those on hand, and you're going to create a collage. And the collage is going to be based on what your connection with prayer has been in the past. So like, for example, many traditions understand or recite the Lord's Prayer, right? And please hear me. There's nothing wrong with using prayer, the Lord's Prayer, or any type of prayer. Because I will say for myself, when there are times when I don't know how to pray, I will go to the Psalms, which are in the Old Testament of the Bible, and I will use those words as kind of an attitude for prayer. And it starts to help me bring forth, I don't know, some sort of prayer, I shouldn't say that, some sort of conversation with God. And in the midst of whatever it is I'm going through, I can't seem to bring my own words, so I allow those to be the words. Here's where the issue becomes. When we take those words and we just say, there's some words for you, and we don't go into that deeper space of the pain and the hurt, okay? And a lot of times that's happening because we have some sort of block about what prayer is supposed to be. And so this is an opportunity for you to, again, in this collage form, so by the end of this, you'll have 3 different exercises that you can use, for a week, for a month, maybe even once a month, for you to really chart what it is that has just kind of become lodged in your heart and caused you to close off from this idea of connection and conversation with God. Okay, so you're going to take those things, you're going to print them off, or you can use your own forms of it if you have an old Bible that you don't mind, using as a collage experiment. You can write out the words if that feels a little more, offers more connectedness to you. But the point of all of it is to bring these words that may have suddenly become inflammatory, if for lack of a better way to say it, or bring some sort of nostalgia, which then brings some sort of bad experience. And you're going to engage those words and journal about what it is that you're experiencing. And my hope is once you're doing that, you'll go into the soul questions that are in this segment of the course and start to engage with what you have written, collaged, brought together. And that you would maybe start to see some theme that is unexpected and perhaps something you had not thought about. So that's my desire. I will get on again in the next video, give you those soul questions, and then I will also upload my process of how I'm creating mine as well. And the hope in that is just to, sometimes I need a visual, when I'm doing some sort of creative space, not to say that you're afraid of getting it wrong, because that's not it. It really is just like, oh, I can see where you're going with that, and I won't do it that way, but I'm inspired to do something else. Or, let's be very frank, there might be this sense of hesitancy, and if you see that, that might be a way for you to at least start, perhaps using my words and then adding on as you see fit. All right? There is no wrong way to do this. The only thing I want you to do is trust yourself. Trust that you're not going to say anything that God, I don't even know really how to say it. You're not going to be saying something that is going to cause some sort of irreparable damage between you and God. And you need to hear that. Because if it cracks you open to the point where you finally understand why you haven't felt the closeness, or even couldn't even bring yourself to believe that God wanted to have conversation, relationship with you. If this is the beginning even of you going to see a professional to start to walk through some of this, then my friends, this is a good thing. All right, see you in the next video.
All right, so here are some soul questions that I'd like you to contemplate as you finish up your unlearning prayer exercise. Okay. And again, it's up to you how you want to engage these questions. There's obviously no right or wrong answers, but what I love about it is it takes a point in time for you to really engage it. And then, later on, a month or so, 6 months or so, when you come back, you'll really be able to gauge, has your relationship around prayer changed as a result of you really committing to create a dynamic in your prayer life that really engages the Creator, right? As opposed to just, I don't know, how do I say this? I don't want to say that it's not a discipline, because I do think it is a discipline, but I think it's more about engaging in a way where it's just checking a box. I've done this. They tell you pray every day. I've done it. But really having a more vulnerable aspect to it, where you are exchanging something that means something to you. Not just time, but attention. Um, yeah, just a time and attention, but also just your heart, right? Because ultimately it's about sharing what's inside your heart and being able to notice when there's something in your heart that maybe you haven't recognized. All right, so here's your soul questions. Okay, what language from your tradition has trapped God and denied God's love and freedom to you? What language from your tradition has trapped God and denied God's love and freedom to you? What language from society or from your vocation has kept God from being present to you? And then here's the opposite. What language from your tradition has been helpful along your journey? What language from your tradition has been helpful along your journey? And I like this one. What biblical passages do you most identify with and why? And are there other spiritual narratives that also inform your story and your identity? And what I love about that is I know that in times when I have felt the most stuck, you know, the the white picket fence did not come. Home ownership did not happen. The happily ever after in a relationship did not go as planned, no matter how much I prayed and fasted and just believed. But there were things that did get me through, and they wouldn't have been called Christian things. There were stories, there was poetry, there was music, there was music from my past that would not necessarily have been played on a Christian radio station. But those things reminded me that God has been here all along. And so I invite you to really have an honest conversation about that, because it doesn't have to have this Christian label on it in order for it to be a part of your prayer conversation. And I really do hope that you see that in this prayer collage that you did, this unlearning prayer, that you could see here a song from an old, rock and roll station that suddenly became the catalyst for you moving back into this intimacy with God. And again, if we go back to my conversation in a couple of videos ago about this idea of, do you see God working everywhere? And if you do, how do you engage that? How does that make you feel safe? Does that make you feel relieved? What does that make you feel like? And then how then do you move through those feelings and continue to move towards intimacy? All right, see you back in the next video. All right, well, welcome back. This is our third segment of our series of meditation practices, and this one is titled Creating a Mandala. And as you know, if you've seen my other course offerings, mandalas are really very special to me. I really have experienced a connectedness and a level of meditation that really I hope that you experience as well if this is your first time creating in this circular form. So let's go ahead and get started like we've done in the past. We're going to find that space where we are sitting quietly. You have a piece of paper. You could also use construction paper as well, especially if you bought a pack for the other exercises that we've done. I will again be using oil pastels, but you can easily use crayons, markers, colored pencils, whatever you have on hand. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start by reading a prayer and prepare our hearts for the creation of this mandala. And here's our prayer. Creator, help me see with your eyes that all the colors of your world might be mine. Now, wherever you're sitting, whether it be at home or in a location where you have the space to meditate, I want you to pay attention to comfort. Make sure that all phones, radios, televisions, any other devices that might interrupt you have been turned off or muted. And I want you to take a few minutes to begin listening. Now, some of us will be drawn into the creative process immediately and will want to begin working as soon as thoughts and images come. And others might take a little more time for that process to begin to unfold. So I don't want you to feel rushed in any way. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to try to take about 10 to 20 minutes where we are listening to God. Now, as you're sitting and you're waiting, letting the thoughts come, releasing the thoughts, think about a particular word or phrase that is coming to your mind, to your heart center. Now take that word or that phrase and just say it a couple of times to yourself out loud. Okay, so now I want you to choose a color to begin with, and you're going to create a circle. And we are going to be incorporating that word or phrase within this mandala. So I want you to choose to either work within the confines of this circle or add another band or two on the inside or the outside of that circle. And notice the feel of the material in your hands and as it engages with the paper. Again, keeping that word or phrase at the forefront of your mind. Now, you're going to start working inside the circle, and you're not trying to create, again, this pretty picture. You're just going to allow creative energy and the energy from that word or phrase to guide you. So you're going to draw or doodle whatever images come to mind. And feel free to change colors as you see fit. And you can work anywhere in your circle that you like. Again, continuing to keep that word or phrase in the forefront of your mind. Continue to add more color. add more images. You could even add words if you'd like. And again, resist the urge to try to create some sort of beautiful pattern. Just really allow the energy that is coming from the word and the phrase in your heart center and the energy that's coming from me as we work together. And you can feel free to turn your page around so you're not necessarily having to work on it in the same way at the same time. So you can turn it upside down, but you are staying within the circle that you've created. So the key to doing something like this is you want to continuously move, because what will start to happen is if you move and you sit too long with it, you'll start to critique it, and that's not what we want to be doing here. So if you're feeling still that explosion of energy, I want you to pause the video and continue to work through your mandala. Now, if you haven't already, go ahead and embed what your word or phrase is within your mandala. And if you're feeling the energy to go ahead and add another mandala to your process, feel free to do that as well. Now, as we continue on with this process, just know you can do these anytime and create a collection, just like we were talking about with doing the word collage, where you can see over a period of time what sort of messages has been kind of sitting within your heart space and you not realizing that they have been there, inviting you into the conversation. Because once again, as you're having conversation with yourself and finding out what your identity is, you then understand God created your identity. So you being your fullest self is the invitation to connect with the God who knows you and can be trusted, can be trusted. And so when we come to that place where we don't feel like God can be trusted, we have to dismantle the story. And these are opportunities to dismantle that story. All right, so let's talk about the soul questions wrapped around the mandala that we made. And if you have done a class with me before, I have actually done a class on mandalas in the past. It's very fascinating to me, the origins of mandalas. And what I liked about this one is that we went in a whole different direction with this mandala. So I am interested to hear what you thought about that. So here again are some journaling questions. And the first one I'd like you to start with is, why is it difficult to pray daily? Why is it difficult to pray daily? And how do the mandalas help you shed the busy life you lead? And do they, and if so, how do they help you stay focused in prayer? So really engage this idea of the mandala and how did that spirit experience work for you? And then part two, because we'll also be discussing Lectio Divina, what was that like for you? And did a word or phrase from Lectio Divina cause you to engage a little more deeply? Or did you not have how was the experience in general? And if there was a word or phrase, how will you engage with that throughout the rest of your day or week? And finally, did you experience a meditative process as you created the mandala? And what I mean by this is, going back to a prior session when I talked about this idea of this perfection, were you able to just engage it as a spiritual exercise, or did you find yourself starting to want to create a beautiful object as opposed to engage it as meditation? And again, I'm not one to say that you can't have a beautiful experience while you're meditating, because I have classes on this where I intentionally take us to a place where we are creating something beautiful and that you would be proud to hang on your wall. But for the purpose of this particular exercise, it was more about finding that place of connection and that window of the soul opening up, and not necessarily getting to a finished product that you would be proud to hang on your wall or give as a gift. So again, engage the conversation with yourself and notice it, because there's no right or wrong to it. But again, this is a point in time, right? Why on this particular day or during this particular time was that something that was important to you? Because that is valuable to notice. All right, I'll see you back in a bit.